Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Green. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Green is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview Sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Green. Today, I've got the good fortune of interviewing Dr. Joey Faucette. He is the architect of the Work Positive culture and best-selling author of Work Positive in a Negative World, the Team Edition. He is a certified executive coach and organizational development consultant. Dr. Joey has spoken to thousands of companies and associations annually for decades. He is the host of the Work Positive podcast and a prolific writer of over 1,000 articles that appeared on Fox News, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, MarketWatch, MSNBC, Entrepreneur.com, and countless others. His content reaches people in more than 50 countries. Dr. Joey, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm glad to meet me today. Man, that's pretty impressive. Who wrote that? Did one of your people write
I think we must have.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I haven't stopped long enough lately to count up all that stuff. But man, I am so excited to be here with you today, Seth, and so very grateful to have become friends with you and your company Market Domination. I'm better for it. So thank you for everything you do, particularly in the world of podcasting and direct response marketing.
Well, you are very welcome. It is our privilege and my honor to have you on today. So let's go back in time. I know you didn't always start out as someone whose content was reaching 50 countries with 1,000 articles. Let's go back to the beginning. How did Dr. Joey get started? What inspired you?
Wow. Go back to the beginning. Well, I've been around a while, so that takes me back. What inspired me to get started was, Seth, I was overwhelmed by the number of people who were working 70% of our waking hours, right? The number of people who were working and just miserable about it. And their brains were locked on this cycle of familiarity. Even though it was miserable, they just kept doing the same thing day after day after day. And I'm like, geez, there's got to be a better way. And so when I started my own company, it was with that mission in mind, to really maximize potential within persons and companies to be the very best they could be. And then you may remember, I have an allergic reaction just mentioning it, but 07, 08, 09, I was on the road. The first edition of Work Positive had come out. Well, no, it had not come out then, but I was doing a lot of positive work with companies and individuals. And man, when that Great Recession, why do we put the word great in front of all this terrible stuff that happens?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
Great Recession, Great Resignation, Great Depression, right? But when the Great Recession happened, my wife looked at me one day because all the speaking engagements went away, all the training and development opportunities went away. And my wife looked at me and said, honey, aren't you supposed to be traveling? And I said, well, the cash cow I was riding got slaughtered. So then it really became an opportunity because, as Dr. Peel said, within every adversity lies the seeds of opportunity, right? So I began looking for the opportunity. And Seth, I found those opportunities. And here's what really inspired me, was I went back to the Great Depression that my grandparents had told me all about. And I said, who are the guys and gals that started businesses back then that are still thriving today? So I found incredible people like Dale Carnegie, Harlan Sanders, Bill Hewlett, Dave Packard, George Maherl, who founded State Farm. And I said, how did they do it? What were their habits? What were their core practices that they put in place? And so I began studying their lives and their businesses and the incredible cultures of companies that they created. And I said, hey, I think I can try this. So I began experimenting in my own work and it was a long tail of that Great Recession for all of us to climb out from under. So I began putting those into practice, and then that's when I began writing about it. And then Entrepreneur Magazine published the first edition of Work Positive. Morgan James has published the most recent edition, the Team Edition. And man, that just inspired me that even in the worst of economic times, there are things we can do, things we can control, and can choose, make choices other than being miserable about work.
Amen to that. Now, you brought up a number of interesting things. Let's unpack some of them. You talked about people, the large percentage of people who are, let's say, unengaged at their workplaces. Why do you think so many people feel that way? And how can we as business owners make it so that that's not our team?
Wow, that's a great question. And we could do a series of episodes about that because I've
We'll
learned
have
so
you
much
back,
from
I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I've just, and I'm still learning. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but I'm still learning. Like I interviewed for my podcast this morning, Gary Ridge, who's the CEO and chairman of WD-40. I just learned so much from him. So let me just unpack a couple of things. First of all, SHRM tells us, every survey I've ever seen SHRM do, somewhere between 54 and 58% of people leave a bad boss. They're not leaving a bad job, they're leaving a bad boss. So their boss, frankly, sucks. I mean, is a jerk. We can care for our people as people. Now, I'm not talking about, beginning every workday, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. I mean, just basic things like Gary Ridge told me this morning. Here's WD-40. That's not a sexy product, right? It's just WD-40. Now I keep it by my tractor and everything else around our little farm, but it's not a sexy product. It's not something that's gonna, be. Yet they're sold in 176 countries. So they continue to innovate and distribute well. How do they do that? You know what one of Gary's core values is? He wants his team members to go home happy, to leave work happy. Who says that, right? If COVID has done anything for us, Seth, it's focused our attention, right, on what makes people click, what makes teams work, what makes work. I think we're going through a great redefinition. If you want to use that word, great.
I
We're
like
going through
that way
great.
better than Great Resignation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, Gary actually calls it the Great Escape. So people just finally got tired. Unfortunately, some of them escaped their spouses, right, and their families, right, because we were all stuck at home. And who are these people? I don't even like them, right? So they escaped those relationships. But Gary calls it the Great Escape because they were, like SHRM finds, 54 to 58% are leaving that bad boss. They just said, hey, I can't take this anymore. I rather just stay at home and the government will send me a check and I can live off of that for a little while, right? Because of the whole unemployment benefits thing. So that's one thing that we as bosses can do. There are some very basic questions. Also on my podcast, I interviewed Hal Lawler, who is the COO of Smoky Bones Restaurant. Seth, they have won Best Place to Work 2 years in a row during a pandemic.
And a restaurant, no less.
Yeah, how do you do that? I mean, even the government's giving restaurants free money, right? so they can continue working. He asked his people a couple of things. First, why do you stay? And then, what do we need to improve? And they ask those questions over and over and over when they call their frontline people fire starters. So when their fire starters come in and clock in, they get asked a question. Would you refer a friend to work for Smoky Bones? I mean, just a simple question. And yet, if like attracts like, which you and I both know because we read Maxwell Maltz and other persons like that, right? We know that like attracts like. So if I've got great fire starters in the Smoky Bones restaurant case, why wouldn't I ask these employees that are sticking with me and are happy with me? So those are just a couple of examples. The list goes on. And my Work Positive Team Edition book was written because I discovered from the first edition that Entrepreneur Magazine did for CEOs and business owners and things like that. And here's a third thing we business owners can do. We can set out to create and to transform and make a positive work culture. But what happens is when you get down to about that mid-level manager level, it dams up. We can understand what it takes, we can do all this stuff, but right there at that mid-level manager, it just dams up. So what do we need to do? We need to transform the whole organization from I hate to say bottom up because I really think flat, but from front line up right? And empower everyone to create a positive work culture. And so that's one other thing business owners can do. Ask your team members, why do you stay? You know, the team members you want to stay. Why do you stay, right? And then what can we do to improve around here? And just really set that culture around a set of values in which you empower everyone in the company to take ownership of creating a positive work culture.
That is some great action items that we can all implement. Now, you use the word, which I think is a writer downer, the great redefinition. I love that. It's so much more positive. What do you think we are all redefining?
I think we're redefining work. Work is being redefined. I'm a boomer, okay? Uh, don't call me Karen, but anyway, I'm a boomer, right? And so for my generation and my parents' generation, both of whom are still living, you know, it was you go to work, you go to work, you go to work, and that's just what you do. And then if there's any of you left over at the end of the day, well, you know, maybe you can go to your kids' little league baseball game or something like that, or participate in community activities or something. Wow, our children and the Z generation, millennials and Zs, they rightfully have said that's just not enough. We're not going to divide ourselves into personal and professional sides of ourselves. Have just looked at it and said, That's not good enough. We want more." So they've insisted on a redefinition of work. And the cool thing about the pandemic, I never thought I'd say that, but the cool thing about the pandemic is because I think we were created for work. I mean, the purpose, the passion, the intersection of that. And when I can align my personal mission with a greater mission, like a corporate mission, and I can see my place in the world and what I'm contributing to provide a product or a service to others to make life better, I get jazzed about that. So I'm giving high fives on my way out of work that I'll get to see my team members tomorrow rather than, you know, slunking out and just, you know, my butt's dragging. There's nothing left for me to do. So work's getting redefined and people doing the work are being valued more. And Seth, I can't tell you, but I think that's the most important thing to come out of the pandemic. The great redefinition is all about work.
Amen, for sure. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
Man, I get to walk alongside people like you and Gary Ridge and Hal Lawler, and then the incredible companies that do business with us because we are an ICF International Coach Federation certified company in terms of our programming. So we get to do training, coach training with amazing people all over the world in a variety of industries. And we use coaching to help them create a positive work culture. And so getting to train people who are passionate about this redefinition of work and then want to follow the framework of our 5 core practices of a work positive culture and really they begin to transform themselves and their companies transform as well. So just getting to walk alongside them and be a part of that amazing transformation, that jazzes me up every day, man.
Absolutely. Who's an ideal client for you?
Ideal clients are uh, business owners who can look in the mirror and be honest with themselves and say, you know, there's a better version of me. And I want to bring that better version of me to work. You know, maybe they're not so self-aware that they can look in the mirror and say, I'm a jerk at work. But if you do, you go ahead and reach out to me right now. So we really have 2 sides of our house. Work positive is for small businesses, 2 to 500 employee companies who really want to attract top talent, reduce team turnover, and create this positive work culture, which, by the way, Seth, increases productivity and profits. And the other side of our house is coach positive. That's for larger enterprise level companies that have dipped their toe in coaching. They may already be a little further down the path in terms of culture transformation. That is, they're measuring for certain things, like I'm talking about Gary Ridge and Hal Lawler. And yet they want to create an internal coaches network based on our framework, the Work Positive framework. And so we can come in and help them train their coaches and understand the framework and then do what I was talking about earlier, really throughout a 20 to 70,000 employee company, empower all the company from the front line to the top line. And really all of them are then responsible for creating that positive work culture. So for the ideal client for the work positive side is 2 to 500 employees. And then on the enterprise level side for coach positive.
And for our folks watching and listening, where can they go to learn more about you and where can they go to get the book?
Well, books are sold in fine bookstores everywhere. So the Work Positive Team Edition book, seriously, is wherever you buy books. Our Morgan James Publishing partners have done an amazing job of distribution with that. So it's just go into wherever you go and search for Work Positive Team Edition, and it'll be there. There's also an audio version of that. If you're watching the video of this, you see I have a face for radio. So they can go to workpositive.today and learn more about how we can help them really transform their work culture and increase productivity of their employees as well as profitability of the company.
Awesome. And of course, you have talk a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah, well, this guy named Seth Green helped me.
I wasn't looking for a plug. I wanted to talk about yourself.
Man, I know, but you put it on the table. I got to pick it up, right? I can
Fair
throw
enough.
in catch. Now, I had a previous podcast for 6.5, almost 7 years. And man, it just never quite achieved what my goals were for it. And that was becoming a source of content generation. But more than that, profitability for the company. So I had laid it down and I said, well, I'll call my friend Tom Schwab and I'll go do interviews on other podcasts, right? And my marketing, my Fractal CMO kept saying, hey, you do a great job of interviewing. You really need to have your own podcast. And I just thought he's being nice until I stumbled across your oil well referral system. And then I said, hey, here's a system with people that know how to make it work. And so I'm in. And so I got in immediately. David Hancock, Morgan James introduced us. And so I'm forever grateful to David. I'm not going to name a grandson after him, but anyway, I'm forever grateful to David. And so the podcast is the Work Positive Podcast. And I mean, as you know, just like Sharkpreneur, it's available on all of the finer podcast aggregators and sources. And so I interview people like Gary Ridge, Hal Lawler, Ivan Meisner. Ivan and I, Dr. Meisner is the founder of BNI. If you've never been in a chapter, go to bni.com, get yourself in a chapter if you're doing business locally. Ivan and I had not spoken in quite some time since his wife, Elizabeth, passed away. So I was delighted to get to talk with him again. And he is just a font of wisdom. So the Work Positive podcast, I'm interviewing people about how do you attract top talent at your company. I mean, Gary Ridge, CEO of WD-40, he's been there 25 years. He's internationally known. He's written a book with Ken Blanchard, and Hal Lawler with Smoky Bones Restaurants. All these amazing people. Hey, what are they doing that's working to attract top talent, to reduce team turnover? What are their challenges? How do they measure for a positive work culture? And then I always like to ask them, Seth, what's one piece of advice, one thing that Work Positive Nation can do today to start to create a positive work culture, regardless of where they are in the organization? So a lot of great stories, a lot of great guests, and Adrian's doing an amazing job of helping me locate those. So thank you to you.
Well, thank you for that shout out. Thank you for the amazing work you do. Thank you for being on the show. Everybody go check out Dr. Joey, go to the website, grab the book, listen to the podcast. Dr. Joey, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure, Seth. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Do you need money to fund your idea, product, or service? Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but need capital to get it done? Kevin Harrington has heard more than 50,000 pitches and knows how to help you make the perfect pitch to get the funding for your entrepreneurial dream. He's distilled the process down in his perfect pitch cheat sheet, and it's yours for free. Just text PITCH to him right now at 727-888-2100. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free perfect pitch cheat sheet. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 to start funding your dream today.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.